sure you don't want to read some more? Thank you, Zach.
Introduce me.
Yeah. What's an introduction? What does it mean to introduce? Wow. Thank you. I will take this moment to point out that there are books here. You should buy some. And also, I think we'll have time afterward for a few questions. So don't run off when we're done. Just hang out. Almost 16 years ago, in response to an attack on the World Trade Center, the United States launched a war in Afghanistan, which is still going on today. 14 years ago, this Monday, the US invaded Iraq in an act of outright aggression, an act justified by lies which originated in the intelligence community and the executive branch, and which were repeated uncritically in the New York Times, on CNN, and in the pages of important magazines. That war ended in 2011, technically, but the chaos sown by the US in Iraq has since blossomed. When the war in Iraq had begun, Hilary Plum writes in her memoir, Watchfires, she had believed that the fury on the streets of New York and San Francisco would only grow, that this war would prove to be her generation's Vietnam, and soon the culture would sunder. But this did not occur. A disappointment, betrayal, she'd had to write a book to comprehend. That book was the novel They Dragged Them Through the Streets, published by FC2 in 2013, which tells the story of 4 young Americans coming to terms with the death of their friend, Zechariah Berkman, who had blown himself up making a bomb, part of the group's clandestine efforts to protest the war in Iraq. They bomb an abandoned office of a right-wing politician and send a letter to the newspaper. They bomb a construction site. Nothing happens. Suicide or accident? One friend asks of Zechariah's death. Another casualty of a far-off war. Like another character's brother, a veteran, who returns home and hangs himself. Like the hundreds of thousands of Iraqi dead, whose names we never knew. The war going on for the past 14, 15, 16, 27 years in Iraq, and Afghanistan, and Yemen, and Somalia, and Pakistan, and Libya, the drone strikes, torture, surveillance, assassination, and bombing that are just part of our life now seem as if they're happening very far away indeed. But they're not. They're happening here. They're part of our life. They shape who we are and how we think. The war is inside us, inside our bodies, and we're inside the war. This, in one sense, is the point and thrust of Plum's 2 books. What we think is separate isn't. It's right here. It's inside us. Which of course raises questions for those of us who see America's violence and feel anger, who see America's victims and feel sorrow. How do you protest a system of which you yourself are a part? How do you resist your own way of life? How does a body fight itself? These questions open into others. Hilary's work, Watchfires and They Drag Them Through the Streets, her other prose and criticism, her co-editing Rescue Press's open prose series, is about much more than the so-called war on terror. And it is an injustice to her intimate lyricism, the graceful severity of her sentences, and the tender ruthlessness of her insights to reduce her work to mere political topicality. Her work is about friendship, love, writing, illness, beans, language, youth, family, care, connection. Yet it's precisely her concern for connection, for our connections to one another, that opens out into the political. The relation between the one and the many, between the body and the body part, between the blood spilled overseas and the blood pumping in our veins, between hope and betrayal and you and me and America. The body in which we all live, she writes, and they drag them through the streets. We all knew the photographs. The man hooded, teetering, wires dangling from his outstretched arms. They weren't going to electrocute him, they said. It was only to scare him. A sizzle on the tongue, nipple, cock, the places we're most ready to receive one another. People always ask how they knew to do this, but who wouldn't? Who doesn't know that where pleasure is felt most is the worst, the best place for pain? If I'd been in that prison, I would have known. I would have watched for hours, the man's arms open and trembling. What I want to say is, we touch the wires together here, in the sites of connection. To say that we can't deny one another. Please welcome Hilary Plum.